You're listening to Cards to the Moon, a podcast about trading cards from both a collector and investor perspective. We hope you'll stick around for the ride as we take a deep dive into the state of the hobby, share some hot takes, hopefully some useful advice, and fun stories along the way. Hey guys, welcome back to Cards to the Moon. My name is Clark from 5 Card Guys on Instagram and on 5cardguys.com. And also welcome back to Hyung, who returns to the pod after coaching the Team Canada junior baseball team in a tournament down in Mexico. We'll ask him about how that went and, if he did any scouting while he was there for us so that, we know which prospects from around the world might be a good pickup in the hobby. But before we get into it, a quick note that John won't be joining us today as he's recovering from the flu, so hope he feels better soon. And he should be back with us next week. Okay, Hyung, tell us what it was like for the past couple weeks competing against some top-tier baseball talent and any highlights from the tournament.
Oh, for sure. I mean, anytime you get to coach at the national level, I think it's definitely an amazing opportunity just representing your country. So I appreciate it always. I've been coaching the junior national team now for, I guess it's a little over 10 years. And,
wow.
Anytime you go, you get to see the world's best, kind of like 18 and under talent. So it's an exciting age. But yeah, we were down in Mexico for the past couple weeks competing. And then before that, we went to the Dominican Republic and we had our camp there. So
right.
Like I said, it's always an amazing experience. You never know what to expect. Unfortunately, we didn't accomplish our goals there. We ran into a little, bad luck. But I enjoyed it. The weather was awesome. Coming back here, it kind of sucks. I got the tail end, I guess, of the good weather in Toronto. As I come back, it got cold now. So the weather is definitely, the bonus when you're down there, especially being a Canadian. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I got to see some prospects as well. I guess that would be considered a little bit of inside trading, but I don't know how valuable it becomes because, I mean, there's so many guys out there. You just never know who's gonna do what. But while we're down in the Dominican Republic in our training camp, we get to play kind of I guess it would be considered the Dominican Summer League team. So. This is when international signees sign when they're 16, 17, and they're kind of run by the MLB organization. So they're 18 and under as well for the most part. And some guys from the U.S. fly in and they basically get their work in. They work on particular things that they might have to sharpen their craft. So we got to, play the Red Sox, the Padres, the Brewers, all these Dominican Summer League teams, and some of the studs are down there. And there was one guy that stood out actually, and he doesn't have a Bowman Chrome first. His name is Samuel Zavala, and he's on the Padres. Okay. And he was a dude that I thought, this guy might be a good guy. He's super young, so he doesn't have a Bowman Chrome auto yet, but he's I believe he's ranked 4th in the Padres organization, and no one really knows about him because obviously, the chase of all the other guys like, Robert Hassell, who was on the Padres, who got traded to the Nationals, and then guys like CJ Abrams. Their cards are always popular because, that was the chase or the hype during release. So I really like the Samuel Zavala kid. Whether or not, he's going to pan out, that's kind of like the gamble you take. But I think he's already played, a couple minor league seasons as an 18-year-old now. So I really like when I seen him in person. I was just like, geez, this guy's a beast. This guy has a chance to really play. So I'm high on him. Couple of the Team USA guys, obviously you get a lot of the young stars. So next year you'll probably see 7 first rounders out of there. So they'll probably be in the 2023 Bowman draft case. And I just remember last time we went. We were in Panama trying to qualify for the World Championship, same thing. And that was when we talked about, Corbin Carroll, Robert Hassell, Bobby Witt Jr., Anthony Volpe,
Jeez.
all on one team. So it's like, how are you gonna even compete with that, right? So
it's crazy.
yeah.
Nice. Sounds like you had a good time, and I hope this guy that you're talking about, Samuel, what's his last name?
Zavala.
Yeah. I hope he blows up, because then I'm gonna play this episode 95 of Cards to the Moon, where Hyung predicted.
It's a sleeper move. I'm telling you, nobody heard of him because he doesn't have any cards out, right? So
yeah,
I'm hoping it sneaks under the radar.
Nice. And they're all so young right now too, right?
Super
they're
young,
teenagers. Yeah, nice. And I'm gonna presume that the U.S. team won the gold in the tournament.
They did. Usually, that's the case, and the way the format is the top four in North America, South America qualify for the world championship. So you had like Puerto Rico, Venezuela, Panama, Nicaragua, Mexico, U.S., us.
Yeah.
So the field is very deep. So anything can happen in baseball. So I know like Team Venezuela had 11 pro guys signed already.
Wow.
So so every game is just gonna be, you're fighting like it's your last. So we played well though overall, but I guess not well enough when we had to, and that kind of cost us. But the U.S. won gold, and they're basically the team to usually beat for sure at that age group.
Yeah. I mean, it's good for the sport too, right? Where the level of competition is that high from all over the world. So that's what you like to see.
Absolutely, and like I said, I played the game for a very long time, and I get to coach third when I'm there with the team, and it's such a different game when you're coaching, and the game is so fast when you're not actually playing it. And I think that's the biggest thing that I realized stepping outside and like actually seeing it from a coaching perspective is the speed of the game, how fast everything happens, how fast people run, how fast people throw. When you're at the professional level, that's why the speed of game is so quick, because the athleticism of everybody is top notch, right? So having that perspective, and when you're playing, you don't realize these things because you just kind of play. But then when you're hands off, you're kind of like monitoring. Right. So it's definitely interesting. And like I said, anytime you could, put your country's name on your chest, the first time I put on a jersey was in 1999 as a junior national team member myself. So it's been the fourth decade, for me to put on a jersey. So the first time in the year 2020s, I guess. So looking forward to, spending more time, and I guess, finding a little more about prospecting while I'm there. Nice.
Well, good to have you back, Hyung. So with that, let's move on now to hobby headlines. So Hyung, because you were in Mexico the past couple of weeks, you unfortunately missed the Sports Card Expo in Toronto this month, but I thought we could still do a segment on it, speaking more generally about live card shows these days. And we could talk about what seems to be the general sentiment in the hobby, and maybe a few ideas on how we can improve the card show experience, especially during this bear market. So before I begin, just a quick shout out to our hobby friend, Jared, who went to the show this past weekend, and he gave me a few of his thoughts as well on the show as an attendee, just like myself and Johnny as well. He went, and Will, our guest host that filled in for you for the past couple of weeks, he also went for a couple of days. So first I want to say it was obvious and probably not surprising that the show wasn't as busy as it was than in previous years, over the past 2 years, particularly when the hobby was booming. We talked about it before on this pod, but it seems that, many investor types have left the hobby, not all of them, but mainly the quick flippers. And even though it was not as busy, I would also say that it was still not empty. Do you know what I mean? Like it felt good that the hobby was still humming.
Yeah.
And it's not dead at all. All the major pessimists might say the hobby's done. I would argue, just look at the number of attendance at the show that I went to, the day that I went to, for sure. Like I had to at times, dodge a number of people in these tight it's all relative, I suppose. But for sure it was a good show, nevertheless. Second, as I expected, a lot of dealers are still pricing their cards way above comps, right? I mean, we talked about this before, and like I hear about this in the shows down south as well. You know, no one wants to sell at such a big loss, right? But it's probably why some of them still have a lot of inventory still hanging around too, right? Yeah. So, but the double negative thing about that is many dealers aren't looking to add to their inventory because they already have a stack, So personally, I found it tough to try to sell or even trade some of my cards. I know Will and John said the same thing, and just an observation. And I know some people had success, but they did have to probably give more value for their trades. But if the dealers were willing to look at your cards, they're probably offering as low as 60% comps, and up to probably 80%, which is a little more fair. So right there, I think it made things a lot difficult to trade or find the right trading partner. One dealer, I'm not joking about this, was fully transparent and said, listen, I don't trade fair. So, you had to be desperate to trade with a dealer like that. And you know what? There are some probably just wanting to unload. So, good for that dealer, to be straight up and honest. One more thing before I ask, if any of this surprises you, Hyung, but what was good to see, in my opinion, is the corporate brand presence we talked about in previous podcast episodes, like eBay, all the grading companies, PSA, Beckett were there, Tag, the new grading company.
Slabs look great.
They had a nice display. PWCC Upper Deck still having booths. It's just good to see that. And even some of the bigger sports card content creators, Jared noted this out, they came to the show, like Jeff Wilson, a sports card investor, king of the cards. He has a pretty big Instagram following, and Slabstocks as well. So it just goes to show that there are still some in the hobby that are still in it for the long haul, much like us here in this pod, right? So yeah, I'm going to throw it to you. Initial thoughts about any of these observations?
Well, I think we kind of speculated that there's going to be more corporate, companies that are going to take advantage of shows like this, because if you think of it from a business perspective, like we go into it as dealers and traders and trying to just unload our cards. It's like a free for all in terms of like slabs, but then, from a business perspective, any company could see, okay, who are my target audience? Are they all coming? So to me, I expected, more presence on the corporate side of things. And we both agreed that, it wasn't a bad thing. I know we always look at it, oh, here's another company coming out, and they're here to ruin the hobby. That's the first thing that people thinks of, right? But this is a good sign that, there are more companies that are actually investing in, startups that could potentially change and better the markets, right? So having a strong presence of that just shows me that, long term, I believe the market is still bullish. And I'm not surprised that, dealers, selling are trying to buy at like 60% comps, or it's ridiculous. I think it's going to work in waves of cycles, because if you think about it, the first cycle was, people were buying at those prices, right? And the people that are trying to sell, they obviously don't want to go at a loss. So they're on the cycle of, I bought way too high, and prices have, obviously corrected itself, and they're trying to get as much back for their loss. And I think the next cycle is going to be the same thing, where, I believe there's going to be a great buying opportunity of sports cards from now until the next year or so, 2024 even. And then you're going to see the resurgence of, prices being reasonable and not, because people are in profits, right? So as those cycles occurs, I think that's kind of inevitable, and we're just unfortunately on the downside of things. And we've discussed this in detail in our previous podcasts. This is what we're kind of going into. So I think a lot of people don't want to sell because they're just in it for too much. But that's the problem is when you have liquid cards that have a high population count, prices can't sustain themselves, and people end up literally crashing the market because they're just trying to sell and cash out whatever they can, right? So I like I said, there's some people are still, I think, selectively buying right now. So I think those are the great. I'm pretty sure there were a couple people that did make those deals that they thought, you know what, this is a card maybe I can't get. But yeah, like I guess it's a little bad news that I wasn't able to make it because of the trip. So I was looking forward to it, but based on kind of like the feedback, it's not saying that I didn't miss too much, but I guess there wasn't as much action as people anticipated or wanted. But I think that's kind of normal, and I think as we see that there's going to be some shows, and depending on timing of the market, where it's gonna pick up again, and people are in profits and they're trying to just sell and be happy with their profits.
Yeah. No, that makes total sense to me. The idea of cycles and where we are in the cycle,
right? And
what you just said too, like in terms of some dealers buying bigger cards, like cards that they might not see
right
in a while. I think Jared also mentioned that, like, unless you have a nice big card, dealers aren't looking really. Like, gone are the days of buying junk slabs or trying to unload your Keston Huras or
absolutely.
You can't sell multiples of those and try to get a bigger card. Like, it's just no dealers looking at those. But I guess with that said, Hyung, I think out of the three of us on this podcast, you would have had the best luck because you have some monster cards that you could have easily showcased around certain dealers.
And that's the thing is like what I realized too, like that was part of the like my strategy. It was time to, like, in 2022, one of my goals was to liquidate the stuff that I don't want or I don't even love collecting. Or I don't, I just have it because I pulled it and I got it graded and, I'm in profits. So it's the whole goal, by the end of 2022 was to really thin out my inventory and be super selective in terms of what I'm buying. And I think for now is the time that I'm really being picky with my purchases and going more long-term strategy and kind of like more, not as risky. So these cards, like, even though I guess I would have liked to deal some of them, I think unless, it was an offer that I couldn't refuse, the cycle would be, I'm just trying to add to my portfolio and try to grow it. I'm not necessarily looking to flip my portfolio, even though I could cash out. I'm just going to have to reinvest that money in, right? So I'm a big believer in, again, what we talk about, collecting what you love. And obviously part of that has value associated with it too. But for me, it's the rarity, because I've had the pains where I've sold way too early on cards that I shouldn't have because I can't get those cards back, nor will I ever see it again. And, I guess for me, it's more of the long-term game and kind of like, being selective. And like, these shows are perfect because I'm doing the same thing. I'm not going to buy any junk slabs. If I'm going to buy a junk slab, 60% comps do make sense, right? Because I'm just going to try flipping it anyways, or I might have a buyer that, likes that certain player. But other than that, I'm going in more of the kind of like strategic purchases where I think it's a solid investment in the long run. So and that includes more of the scarcity.
Yeah. No, I think that's a pretty solid strategy for sure, especially during this time. I guess one question I do have right now is then, while we're in this bear market where no one seems to be buying other than bigger cards, is there anything we can do to improve the local card show experience, like over the next year? Because I would expect, even in 2023, we might be on the down part of the cycle still, right? Because, and I think it's just gonna take time because, like I said, people for the most part are in it for the right reasons. So as time goes by and people are accepting some of their losses, like some of the stuff, you got to remember, if you look at any
any, graph over the last 2 years, it follows the exact same pattern. Like and crypto goes the same way, stocks go the same way. Like you got to understand, real estate goes the same way. So I think there's a mixture of like the corporate world too coming in, all these companies that are investing millions of dollars into new companies, and kind of like you make that a better experience, because obviously these companies have bigger marketing budgets than individual dealers. I think it's going to change the way card shows are going to be, because I think there's going to be more value in, getting more free swag stuff, because now companies are competing for, the marketing space, or to make a big splash at shows, because it's not necessarily about, selling cards or getting rid of cards. But then I think as time goes by, people won't waste time with junk slabs, because really nobody's buying junk slabs, right? So all you see is right now people trying to get rid of their junk, right? And it shows, right? But then if you have guys that dealer after dealer that has pretty amazing cards, even if you're not a buyer, I think that itself is an experience to walk around and see like museum pieces.
Yeah, for sure.
And to me, that's what a card show is all about. It's not necessarily, I killed it by making X amount of dollars. It's like, okay, there's this new company that I've seen that gets me excited. There's this new company I've seen, or a new app I've seen. I think I could use it, there's this card I've seen. Oh my God, I'll save up for a year to buy this card. I seen it in person. That's what I want. I talked to that guy, and maybe in a year I'm able to afford it. I'm going to put in an offer, right? So it's the whole experience that I guess I would like to, get back to the true roots of, how when we were kids, if we went to a card show, we're like, I can't wait till just walk around, and see what's out there, and just be a kid again, right? So
yeah, no, excellent points for sure. I had similar ideas, like, I think especially for 2023, if the economy is going to be in a recession or stay in a recession, we got to kind of almost change expectations going into these card shows. It's not just about flipping quickly, because it's not easy to do anymore. But it's like you said, it's just getting to know others in the hobby, and you could commiserate together during this bear market, but also like to see what other companies are out there. I love what you said about looking at grail cards, and like it also from a personal standpoint as a collector, one strategy I might employ is that I would try to sell all, like you already did, Hyung, like in the last year, try to liquidate as much as possible the cards that you're not really in love with. You just kind of got it by ripping packs, you graded it, think you could make a quick profit, and maybe now you can't make as much of a profit, but you might as well have cash on hand for those cards. For sure. Maybe you have to sell at 50-60% comps even on eBay or online, then accumulate that cash, and then when you go to these card shows, you might see that one card that you love, that you like a lot more, and you're buying
it for cheap anyways, right? Or at a lower price. So cash out and put it into a bigger card, and it won't hurt as much, right?
Definitely. Just and like I've also been thinking, like I've seen more, especially here in Canada now. We have more card stores. LCS is opening, and that's been a good sign that the hobby is still robust. But all of them are holding trade nights, and I feel like that's going to be a bigger factor in the next year when you're not buying or selling. But maybe you could find that right trading partner with people in the community, and that might be something to look into. That's another idea. I don't know too much about this, so I won't spend too much time talking about it, but I know Whatnot, the company Whatnot, they just had some kind of virtual card show with multiple dealers, and I don't know if there was like time slots where some bigger dealers got to try to sell their stuff. So it's kind of a virtual booth. That might be another interesting idea, especially for people that can't make it to these live card shows, but taking on the digital realm is kind of almost to be expected going into next year as well. So I think that'll be more.
I will say this too. I think a lot of people, and we're going to see the backlash of this over the past couple of years. I guess a lot of people, joined the hobby, and may not necessarily know the rules in terms of kind of like how taxes work. So I think a lot of people that sold don't realize, what capital gains are, and they kind of scratch their head to saying, okay, how much taxes do I owe? And I think what you're going to see is a lot of people get hit with, unexpected, capital gains that they owe taxes to. So a way around that would be obviously trading, right? So you could always constantly trade up, and not there because there's no monetary transaction, right? It could start becoming more popular to barter instead of kind of like actually having a transaction of a sale in product, right? So that might also change the spectrum of card shows moving forward as well. So that's not just something to think about. I think a lot of people have questions regarding, stuff like that, and they end up potentially leaving the hobby because it's like they do all this work for a small amount of profit, and you realize, well, I just owe more in taxes at the end of the year, right? So, and obviously the right thing to say is speak to your accountant. There's different rules to different business styles, so act accordingly, I would say, because the rules are definitely different.
For sure. That just gave me an idea. Trade nights, they always usually happen after the main show. I feel like there should be an area in the card show where it happens during the card show. Like you can go, just an idea for the Sports Card Expo organizers. So
it's just a trade room or something.
Exactly.
It's like the smokers room. In the airport where people just go in and smoke in the airport. It's like this would be the new venue or the room to just trade.
I like it. That's a great analogy. So I hope people are listening, people that are organizing future card shows. I think that's a way to go. All right. Hopefully if we always like to throw it back to our listeners. If you guys have any good ideas or cool ideas that you want to share with us about how to improve live card shows, especially over the next year, let us know. You could always reach us at Instagram at Cards to the Moon, and we'll bring it up in our next podcast episode. Okay, let's move on to our next segment we're simply calling Buy, Sell, Hold. So we haven't done this in a while, but I'm going to list some players who are either super hot right now or really cold and trending downward. And then you tell me if you would buy, sell, or hold their cards at this time. Okay, so let's start with the players who are selling remarkably well, according to the Card Ladder Player Index, which I looked up. And we could see the trend in value based on recent sales of some of the players' key cards. So it kind of takes an aggregate and then projects a trend. So the numbers I'm quoting are estimates over the past month, okay, in terms of increase in value or decrease in value. So I'm going to start off with a couple of football quarterbacks, and this will be no surprise why they're trending upwards. Jalen Hurts over the last month has seen a 65% growth in value. Might be because the Eagles are 8-1 this season. Yeah,
they lost their first game
against the Commanders. Yeah. Football's funny that way.
Yeah, I know. And that's why I'm gonna say a sell. Because there's so much more I guess risk that can happen. Like I was a sell on Hurts before too, but as obviously the Eagles were undefeated, his prices kept on creeping up because there was a point in time where Jalen Hurts was cheap. So now it's like we're if you see those graphs where you see the 2-year graph where it's the spike and then the tumble and then the correction and then it's a slow kind of like healthier, I guess, trend. I think we're at that spike where you're going to see a tumble in Jalen Hurts' price. So I think you either want to catch it on the way up of that peak or on the way down. I think if you're going to be holding it, you're going to go for a long ride and go all the way back down. So I'm going to say Jalen Hurts is a sell.
Okay.
Yeah.
It makes total sense to me. I'm saying it's a sell. but I also said that at the beginning of the season, and Jalen Hurts completely burned me. So I apologize in advance if he continues to go up with my prediction to sell once again. All right, next quarterback, Justin Fields. This is more interesting. He's seen about a 45% growth. The Bears that he plays for are 3-7 now, so on a losing team, but he's been doing ridiculous things, on the field, rushing, everything that, you want to see in Justin Fields, the potential that he had going into the season. You're kind of seeing the last 2 games. So what are you doing with Fields?
With Fields, I'm saying it's a sell as well. Like I think the reason why there is so much growth is because Justin Fields' price was so cheap at one point, right? So what you're seeing is a correction in either way. So, but the problem is, I think from the mid to long term, like some people might, believe in Justin Fields in the long term, but in my opinion, it's going to come down until he establishes himself as an actual, a star quarterback and, takes his team deep into a playoff role. And, you look at the trends of all quarterbacks that, look at Justin Herbert, for instance, like the expectations of Justin Herbert was like ridiculous. Same with Joe Burrow. It's like, those aren't sustainable. We think that like Pat Mahomes is going to do what he did, in the last, or like 3 or 4 years every year. It doesn't make any sense. So for me, Justin Fields was so cheap. So I think that spike in growth was kind of like people who've seen that potential in Justin Fields. They made the profit. But now you're kind of playing with that, okay, how high is it going to go before it comes back down a bit? So I'm also a sell on Justin Fields because you said 45% growth. I think that's pretty good, but I think that it's not necessarily overpriced. You know what I mean? I think it's just, it was so cheap that's what you're seeing as the growth.
Yeah. I'm going to say hold, but because I just like Justin Fields as a quarterback, like his talent's still there. And I think what you just said is key to why I'm saying it's a hold, because it's not overpriced yet.
Right.
I think it's corrected itself because I do agree with you. It's so low. And in the past month, you're seeing that spike because of what he's been doing on the field. But at some point, he's got to win games for the Bears. That team's got to do much better than they are now. But if you believe in the talent, he's priced about right, in my opinion. And then if he could build on his current success, then I could see it go a bit higher. But this is more of a longer term hold,
right?
And you take the risks associated with that.
And you kind of see the cycles. For instance, Jalen Hurts was probably in the same situation as Justin Fields a year ago, where it was a mediocre Philadelphia team, and then they make off-season moves, and Jalen Hurts' price started spiking at the beginning of the season. So I think timing it would be key too, because you're in the mid-season, but then in the off-season, I think depending there might be great opportunity to kind of like play that game for next season, right? So
yeah, totally agree. Okay, one more from the trending upward category. Tyrese Maxey of the Philadelphia 76ers. 22.8 points on average, I believe. I'm just looking up the stats right now for this year. Just building on a crazy good season last season as well. So
I like Maxey, yeah.
What do you think?
I think he was really cheap to begin with. So I think that's what you're seeing with the growth, is the consistency in play. And it's kind of similar to the Justin Fields, but I mean, Tyrese Maxey, I would say he's backing it up with individual performance. But that's what worries me, is like we've talked about these young rookies like the Trey Youngs, the Donovan Mitchells and stuff like that, who are the young stars that get no love in the hobby because they're in the 4th, 5th year now, and it ends up tanking, right? So it depends on where you are with Maxey, because this is his 3rd season. So you're looking at that same kind of trend that you're going to see with the Jason Tatums, with the Donovan Mitchells, and so I think there are buying opportunities still, because I think Tyrese Maxey was cheap to begin with. So I think part of that growth that we're seeing is because of that.
Yeah.
So yeah. So I would say I'm
a
hold for Tyrese Maxey, because I do believe in his talent.
Yep. I would say I'm a little more bullish on Maxey, so I'm going to say he's a buy for certain cards. The 76ers, I feel like they're just beginning to hit their stride. They kind of stumbled out of the gate. They were expected to do well. Some predicted them to win the Eastern Conference, and now they're like, oh, the East is so strong this season. Right. So who knows where the 76ers will be. But, they certainly have a great team. And if Harden comes back, Harden's injured, right? I don't remember. But, if they have their full team, Maxey's obviously a key player on that team. I think he'll just continue to grow in confidence. And, Joel Embiid had a couple of ridiculous games. So, the Sixers as a team gets better. I just think Maxey's going to be a key part. And I think there are cheaper cards to get even now. And I don't know. I like basketball right now. It's dipped so hard, over the last half year, compared to the other sports. I just think in general, there's more buying opportunities now for basketball than in the other sports. So I like Maxey as a play. All right, we'll go to the other side where these cards are trending downwards for whatever reason. I think each case is a little bit different. But the first guy in baseball, Spencer Torkelson. He's dropped about 69% in value over the past month.
Man, Spencer Torkelson is a little tough for me. He was so hyped up to begin with, and part of that was him being a pretty high draft pick with the expectation of the world on him, right? I mean, he was a guy that played for Arizona State University and just absolutely mashed, and I think that's one of the things that was expected out of him. To be a hitter, to be a plus bat. And for me, the hype initially had his prices so high that, it's inevitable for it to crash with, he hit 203 last year in his first full season. And, in general, he hasn't really had much success. And that kind of concerns me going into kind of like his 22, 23. He's 23 now, I believe, 23, 24. So, and then I look back at guys like Pete Alonso, who are his comps and how are his comps cards doing? So guys like Pete Alonso that hit 52 his first rookie season, and Torkelson hitting 203 with 8. Right. And for me, it's like Alonso gets no love. Jordan Alvarez gets no love. Guys that have done it. And it's like, what does Spencer Torkelson have to do for his prices to kind of like sustain itself? And I think he could hit next year 270 with 35 home runs and 100 RBIs. And where his prices were at before, I still don't think they have, a chance. And part of that is that he's a young rookie. He's part of the hype in the releases of this year, but those are things that I think eventually will correct itself. So I'm a sell on Spencer Torkelson. I think I just feel like there's so much better options out there for what people are paying for Spencer. Yeah. So I hope I like him as a player. I think he's gonna potentially be a good baseball player, but like I said, in terms of card value, like I'd rather buy Pete Alonso at this point.
Interesting. Yeah, I hear what you're saying. I was just checking the prices for Spencer Torkelson's Bowman Chrome, his first auto, PSA 10. It once sold for $2,200. In when he was coming up, and the last one sold for, can you guess?
I'm gonna say Spencer Torkelson. I'm gonna say 700.
$330.
Wow. So that's
so it's tumbled. It's tumbled. That's tempting. I'm holding if I have it, because you just gotta wait till next season, hope that the Tigers are a bit better, and then he finds his groove a little bit more and then starts smashing like he's capable of. But in the off season, if it drops even more, which I anticipate it might, like just say it gets to 200 PSA 10 Bowman Chrome, I might buy at that point, and just because I like what you're saying, compared to other players, what does he have to do? But he's still going into his second year, so the shine is just a little bit there. Whereas Alonso, you're either in or you're out, and he's kind of boring.
And Torkelson is going to have to perform like this year. It's kind of going to be like, okay, he's going to go 25 now, and he hasn't established that career. But I mean, if there's a lot to like he's definitely a guy that has upside to him in terms of his stick and what he can do with it. So it's just a matter of when you're gonna, sell and buy and sell, I guess.
All right. Okay. Next one. This is curious to me. Wayne Gretzky saw a 38% drop over the last month. Yeah. I don't know if he's just, people aren't thinking about Gretzky now.
It makes sense to me. I think what's happening is you're going to see the majority of the volatility spike on Gretzky's, like the PSA 8 and up. The price, the expensive grades basically, because I think at the height of those had the most to come down because they're PSA 10s, PSA 9s, they're still higher pop counts. So I don't think it was enough to sustain itself at those prices. So I think you're showing the data might show that those are dropping, but I think where there was extreme value in the past was the lower grade PSAs. And I think they're on a more healthier trend, in terms of they have less correction, or they might have proper correction in the right direction, right? Where, maybe a PSA 3 or a PSA 4 was really cheap, right? And now it's more on a, slow, steady gain where it's growing, 3-4%, per year or whatever it is. Or maybe it's a little more than that. But I would think that the majority of the card and why it's showing a downward trend is because the PSA 9s, for instance, they sold for tons of money. I think 111K for a PSA 9 at one point. I could be totally wrong on that value, but there's a lot. If it dips to like 60,000 or 50,000, that's a huge drop, as opposed to a PSA 6 that really hasn't gone up during that spike. It's kind of like maintained its kind of healthy trend, right? So I think personally think Wayne Gretzky is always a buy, and so I would be looking at those volatility markers and maybe potentially where you think the bottom is on any particular grade you're targeting, and I think it's a great buying opportunity for Wayne Gretzky.
What you kind of explained makes sense to me, and I guess the only difference between you and I is you'll be trying to get the PSA 9 while I'll be trying to get the PSA 4.
I have a PSA 4 for sale if you need.
Okay. We'll talk after the show. All right. The last one is Cade Cunningham of the Detroit Pistons. Almost 35% drop over the past month. Yeah,
I'm a sell with Cade Cunningham too. Like I said, you look at, even LaMelo, guys that, have success in their first year, and it's not like they're killing it. I go back to Trae Young. It's like, what does Trae Young have to do now that his Atlanta Hawks are winning too, right? It's like, what else does he have to do? And he's entering his fifth year, and he's scoring more points than anybody in the last 5 years. Put him with anybody, and he's up there. So I see it the same way. It's like all these young stars. There's a lot to be excited for, but there's also a lot of good stars that are currently playing that I think have way more value and, that Hall of Fame trajectory. So I think Cade Cunningham, I think he's injured again, or he's injured right now. So I think that's taking effect on, his card values. Right. And I don't think the Pistons are doing too hot either, right? So, just I think double whammy for Cade. And I know you're thinking, hey, maybe there's a good buying opportunity. I'm just staying off younger stars in general for now, unless it's a Tyrese Maxey situation where it's like a young star that didn't get no love and there's great buying opportunity. But all Cade Cunningham, Jalen Green, Scotty Barnes, all these guys were the hype. So it's like you got to always remember that. Zion Williamson, Ja Morant in 2019, right? And the list goes on, right? So it depends on where prices were before, and I think Cade was overpriced just because of the hype. So I'm a sell.
Yeah. Oh man, so tempting. You read my mind. I like I said before, I'm just kind of generally bullish on basketball cards because of how much they dipped, and I feel like when the market rebounds, the basketball card market will rebound pretty well, in my opinion. So, but to your point, it's not super cheap for Cunningham cards still.
Right.
So you're right. Like where Maxey is, I feel like much more of a deal. Yeah, Cunningham, I would just probably wait and hold at this point. And he's injured. He's only, I guess, projected to miss 4 games. So we'll see after that. And the Pistons probably won't be a contender this season as well. But, as the season progresses, if there's, if people start to forget about the Pistons and, Cunningham, I think he's a special talent. So that's why I'm still interested. So there's a price where I would pull the trigger, but right now I think he's still a hold. Okay, that's another segment of buy, sell, hold based on current trends, and we might revisit this segment maybe in a month to see who the new players are that are spiking upwards and spiking downwards. Right. So we'll see. Let's move on to our regular weekly segment we call Pick One. And if you're a new listener to our podcast, this is when the two of us in this show will put up 2 players or 2 cards, and then we debate which one we would rather invest in. So Hyung, as usual, do you want to start things off?
Sure. I'm gonna go baseball again because I'm just trying to put like real life situations together, because I feel like sometimes like how do people really buy cards? Sometimes it's on a budget. Usually it's within a budget. I want to invest in A player or B player. And I want this card for them at this price, right? So I tried sticking at the $1,000 budget. So I have 2 cards that I put up against in the $1,000 budget. One, I went over budget. One, I went under budget. And okay. I think it's realistically a good kind of like comparison of what you would invest in, because I'm genuinely curious as well. I would be legitimately debating these 2. Just based on the prices. So the first card is Vladimir Guerrero Jr.'s Bowman Chrome in 2016. His refractor auto. So out of $499, a BGS 9.5 True Gem sold for $1,235 last week. Okay. And at the peak, that was about a $3,000 card. So it's a retraction of about 56% in the last 3 months. So obviously a good buy at $1,200 in my opinion. So I went slightly over budget with that card, and I'm pairing it up with a Yordan Alvarez Bowman Chrome in 2018. His Bowman First Chrome refractor auto PSA 10 sold for $750. So that also hit peak within the last 3 months, and obviously Yordan was a superstar, the whole year. And in the playoffs and World Series, that price was just as high as $1,600, and Yordan's prices were cheap in general. So $750 is probably kind of like, in general, it's still high because people made profit off that, because people are buying that at $300, $200 when nobody wanted Yordan, right? So it does show it's on a downward trend, and $750 seems to be kind of like a dipped price, but if you had $1,000, would you spend the extra $250 to buy that Vladdy, or would you go with the PSA 10 Yordan Alvarez at $750?
Man, this is a really tough one. I'm gonna try to not let my Blue Jays bias get in the way of this. Pick one. Man. So cheap, the Alvarez.
And it's pop 66 on the Alvarez versus, I believe it's pop 217 for the BGS 9.5.
For Vladimir
For
Guerrero.
Vlad's refractor auto.
Okay, my brain is telling me to go with Yordan Alvarez. But my heart, I always got to go with my heart, and my gut
100%.
Is Vladdy. And I think, I don't know, because the hobby seems to hate the Astros and Alvarez, and like he's played phenomenally, in the recent playoffs where they won the World Series. FYI for people following baseball, right. He was a key contributor to that, man. To the pennant, right? And yet it's still just fluctuating. Like right. I'm looking at the card ladder chart for that card, and it's like up, down, up, down, up, down. where you would expect, a player of his caliber and the way he's contributing in the postseason would see an upward trend. So I don't know if that would change anytime soon. I don't know if the hobby's ready for someone like Jordan Alvarez,
Yeah.
But whereas I feel like Vladdy might be a more likable guy if the Jays can have another great season, make a postseason push that went further than where we went with against the Mariners. And I just think they're a fun team, and maybe that's probably my bias, but I think Vladdy can get up there. I'm more confident that he can get back up there in terms of closer to his peak value than Jordan Alvarez, who's accomplished everything in terms of winning the World Series. And like if Vladdy won the World Series, I would imagine there will be a spike and not this volatility or fluctuation that we're seeing with Jordan cards for whatever reason. So I'm going with Vladimir with the upside.
Nice. Play. We should do a post on this, because I'm genuinely like I want to see the consensus.
Let's hold a poll.
Yeah, let's do a poll, and because I'm going Jordan.
You're still with
I'm
Jordan. I'm
still with Jordan. I just think he is probably one of the greatest modern day hitters around, and it's like he always proves me wrong. I always sell him short, and I'm like, nobody wants Jordan, and then I'm like, crap, I shouldn't have got rid of that Orange Wave PSA 10. And then it's like the autos are so cheap. His Topps Chrome Sapphire, and it's like nobody wants him. And then I'm like, I watch him play. I'm like, this guy is a dude. Like, this guy is the real deal. Like, there's very few players that I'm putting him in the same category. And obviously Vladdy still falls into that category. And, you can't go wrong with that, like, 2016 Bowman Chrome of Vladdy's. Like, it's one of the cards that kind of like everybody was after on release. It was such a hyped card that it will, I think, eventually become iconic. Whereas Jordan's card won't be. But I think in the short run, I think Jordan puts up another season of 300 plus with like 35, 40 home run potential. And he was probably runner up, or I don't know where he was in the MVP race, but he had to be up there. And I just think 750 is really cheap. And comparing it to Vladdy's, BGS 9.5, I think there's value in that, but that means that 9.5 BGS is selling for half of his PSA 10. So it would put Vladdy's PSA 10 refractor at about 2,500 to 3,000 right now. So I just look at that and say, you know what, I could see Jordan's prices doing that, one of these days. Whenever he gets the love he deserves, I know that it's more expensive than a $750 card, because he's slowly winning a lot of awards, right? If you look at Jordan's lines and, the brass, like, Soto did it before. He won, a batting title, and then he won a World Series. Jordan's not too far off. He had a 6.8 WAR this season, and he's still young, and he puts together, a few more of those years. I think he'll be up in the 50 WAR by the time he's like, 30, in his low 30s. And to me, it's like that's now getting you into serious Hall of Fame consideration, right? So, I like Jordan's prices at 750. I'm still a buyer of Vlad. I just think I'm hesitant of spending that extra $500 when I could pick up something like a Jordan. Yeah. So I'm gonna go with the Jordan, but I'm interested to see, because I think you're gonna get.
We'll do a poll.
Yeah. That'd be awesome.
Yeah, nice. I hope you're right, because I feel like he might be. Well, let me get into my pick one, and then I'll make the comparison. Okay. Trae Young, Silver Prism, PSA 10. Yeah. I'm gonna bring him back one more time. I hope Jordan is not my Trae Young, where you're just waiting and waiting for the hobby to give the player the proper respect. Right. But anyway, I'm gonna put Trae Young, Silver Prism, PSA 10 rookie card, which is about 350, 360 now, and I'm still holding. I'm still believing that this season people will begin to give him a little bit more respect, as the Atlanta Hawks are winning games. And I'm going to pit that against another player who's been playing really well, Donovan Mitchell. And we talked about him in a past podcast episode too. And we're like, I feel like the last time I saw him off him because there's no respect. But is his price too cheap now? I think it's going for a similar amount, $360, $370. Wow. So comparable prices for his Silver Prism PSA 10. Yeah. And wanted to put those two guys up there.
Okay, this is crazy because I'm a Trae Young believer. But for me, the way Donovan Mitchell's playing this year, and also it's insane. And this is what we are saying with best case Donovan Mitchell. And you have the perfect marriage here in terms of pop count on the silver. Right. You know what I mean? And that's huge. Low, so the pop count on the Silver Prism of the Donovan Mitchell of the PSA 10 is 575. Pop count on the silver of Trae is 2,150. So you're talking about 4 times more the production of Trae Young's card over Donovan Mitchell. And you're talking about, for the same price. And if you look at the 3-month trend, obviously you see the Eiffel Tower on both. Trae Young's obviously a bit earlier because, he had that huge spike in probably a couple years ago. And then you see the downtrend and very similar looking graphs, to be honest. But I think both are kind of like at its dip, at its low. But I think the pop 575 on the Mitchell is going to help sustain it a little better. And the way he's playing this year, I could see it kind of like have that potential of like kind of like exploding if he keeps up the way he's playing. If Utah keeps on, winning, I think his prices may go up. Because I don't know what Trae Young has to do. I've been through his cards like in his highs and lows, and his cards ain't doing anything. Because if you look at the trend, I'm on Trae Young. See where the middle finger is? I'm on the bottom of that trend, and you can see that's a long downtrend of just miserable, right? So it's like Trae Young's having his typical year. The only difference is Atlanta's, a little more, older and better. So it's interesting to see, but I don't think Trae Young's prices are going to go as crazy as we're expecting. But I could see Donovan Mitchell's prices go there.
Yeah, I won't make this too long. I'm going to agree with you. It's going to be a Donovan Mitchell sweep, as much as that hurts me to say, because man, I think at the beginning of the season, I said, I'm going to give Trae Young one more year, for his cards to do something. Because, DeJounte Murray's on the team. Right. I think Atlanta Hawks are a much better team. And they're, early in the season, they're showing that they are a better team. But to all your points that you mentioned about Donovan Mitchell, and I'm going to add, like, the Cleveland Cavaliers just look like a really good team. They play well together. You got Mobley, you got Jarrett, and you got like Darius Garland. Like, they might make a real run at the Eastern Conference Championships. Right. And who knew? Mitchell just had to get out of Utah to actually start to play unselfishly and to step up as well. Just get away from Rudy Gobert, who's the Timberwolves are another story, so we'll talk about that later. But Mitchell, if just for the pop count alone, as you mentioned, like I could see that go up when people realize, like, wow, actually this is under 600 pop count for a Silver Prism PSA 10. I don't know if a lot of people are aware of that fact even. Right. So I think that's going to be a key factor in. If he continues to play well, we could see that spike in the Silver Prism PSA 10. So, yeah, I might have to sell my Trae Young at a loss and then just pick up a Donovan Mitchell while they're the same price. That might be the smart play.
Yeah, you might be able to get some of that money back quicker, at least, right? It'd be a parallel move, kind of, and then it's like, which one will spike up first?
Yep. Knowing my luck, Trae Young's going to shoot up once I sell my last Trae Young card. But hey, what can you do? All right. That's another episode for Cards to the Moon. Thanks again to all our listeners and subscribers for joining us. And if you haven't done so already and you enjoyed this episode, we really appreciate you if you gave us 5 stars on wherever you listen to your podcast. All right, till next week, we'll see you soon. Bye. Hey, thanks for listening to Cards to the Moon. We'd really appreciate you subscribing to our podcast wherever you listen to your podcasts. And you can also connect with each of us on Instagram at 5cardguys, or you can follow Hyung at Integrity Sports Cards, or John at TradeU at Recess. You can also check us out at 5cardguys.com. Thanks again, and hope to connect soon.